and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
Hello, Los Angeles family. I want to welcome you to Theology Thursdays. Yeah! In Theology Thursdays, we're going to address some questions and issues that people have about the Christian faith. My name is Elder Oscar Owens, and I am the Christian Education Director and the Director of the Bible College of the Los Angeles Church. And we're going to do a segment called MythBusters. Yes, MythBusters. We're going to bust some myths that people have about Christianity. We've asked some people to Twitter us and to ask us some questions or tell us some myths that they have about Christianity. So, the first one I'm going to address is, did Jesus die on a cross? That is the question. Well, it's implying that Jesus didn't die on the cross. That is the myth. Okay, so, now for many of you listening to this, this seems very obvious that Jesus did die on the cross. But I deal with this myth because what I hear in the questioner is one of the critics and the criticisms that some religions that are not Christian have of Christianity. There are some religions that want to say that Jesus did not die on a cross. They want to say that Jesus died on a stake. He did not die on a cross. Well, what this really belies or reveals is ignorance about the times and what the Bible was communicating about the times. First of all, there are many verses in the New Testament that tell us that Jesus was crucified. There's at least 49. Here's an example. Jesus himself said, you know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. That's Matthew 26, verse 2. Matthew 27, verse 22 says, Pilate said unto them, what shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ? They all say unto him, let him be crucified. Matthew 27, 26 says, then they released Barabbas unto them, and he had Jesus scourged, and he delivered him to be crucified. And it goes on and talk using this word crucified. So what does the word crucify mean? Well, crucify is a term that was really created by the Romans. Well, not a term. It was a form of torture. It was one of the most horrible forms of torture that's ever been conceived by human beings. And not only was torture, it was torture that led to death. Crucifixion, we believe the Romans got from the Persians, and then they took it. And crucifixion is something that the Romans would do to the people that they thought were the worst criminals, and primarily people who were non-Roman citizens. So it was a form of torture and death that they put on people, that they wanted to show the power of Rome and the might of Rome and the hatred of Rome against people especially who were not Romans, people who were rebelling against Rome, people who were creating treason in their mind, etc. Now this is the thing that they came up with, that how they would punish people that they hated and people that did crimes against them, especially when they rebelled against the Romans. They wanted to make a public example out of them. They wanted to make them feel the greatest amount of pain as they were dying. And so they came up with this idea that they would put a stake in the ground, that's the stake part of it, but that they would also put a crossbar on the top of the stake, either in the form of a T or in the form of what we know now to be the cross that Jesus died on. There was a crossbar. And what they would do is that they would stretch the criminal out such that his wrists would be nailed, fixed, attached to the crossbar at the top, nailed through this part of the wrist, not through the hands because it would tear, And his feet would also be nailed to the cross at the bottom. And what they did was to have this person hang on this cross until the person died. Now, what is it that kills a person that hangs on a cross? Primarily, it's suffocation, it's asphyxiation. Because as you're hanging on a cross in this position, it's very difficult to breathe. And why it's torture is, number one, nails are through your wrists, and this is a source of nerves here, so it's very painful. While you're there, you're trying to pull up to breathe. So when you pull up to breathe, you're putting weight on the pain of the nails through your wrists, big giant nails through your wrists. So you've got shooting pain in your wrists, pulling up to breathe. Of course, you're going to get tired, and the pain is going to hurt you so terribly doing that. But then now you're going to try to push yourself up with your feet. Well, your ankles are nailed through the ankle. These big giant nails, like railroad spikes, are nailed through your ankles to the wood. And now you're trying to push up on that. That's painful. So you go back and forth between the two. And then also what they did was they scourged the crucified person. That is, they whipped them with a cat of nine tails, similar to that, a whip that had pieces of bone in it. They whipped them on their back within an inch of their life. Many times people died on the whipping post. We know the Bible says that Jesus received 39 lashes. And so now you're on this cross, you can't breathe, you're trying to pull up, and when you pull up, your back is also being rubbed against the wood, and it was not a smooth wood. And so it was just, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. You're in excruciating pain. In fact, the word excruciate comes from the word cross. Crucifixion, excruciate. You're in excruciating pain. And people died because they slowly suffocated, they bled to death, they dehydrated, or the elements. And many times it took days for people to die upon the cross. And so it's very clear in the New Testament texts that Jesus is crucified. And they only crucified, the Romans only crucified on the cross. Now, here's where the controversy comes in. The Greek word for crucify is a word that means a stake, to nail to a stake. It actually meant to nail to a tree. It meant to nail to a tree. But what we have to understand by this is the Greek word being used for the Latin technical term crucify. The Romans came up with the term crucify. So here we have the Greeks approximating in their own language their best way to describe this amazing form of torture. And so they use a word that actually means to nail to a tree. Well, the cross was made out of wood, and wood is a tree. And they did nail the hands of the person and the feet to that wood. Now, what some critics of Christianity have said is that we mischaracterized what was being said, and that Jesus was nailed to a stake, you know, somehow like this. But that belies the truth of what the Romans were doing at the time. You can search all kinds of historical records and find out that the Romans crucified people on crosses. They crucified hundreds and thousands of people upon crosses. And that's why crucifixion, we know, is the way he was killed. That he died on a Roman cross with his arms spread out, nailed to the cross, his feet nailed to the cross, whipped, and that's why we know he died on a cross. If you'd like to know more, tune in to our extended version of this subject, where I will also talk about, did Jesus actually physically die on the cross? Because some people think that he didn't really die on the cross. And then, what does this all mean? What does the meaning of Jesus Christ dying on the cross, and what did it accomplish for humanity? Tune in next time, and we shall do more myths. I look forward to seeing you again. God bless you.